Hello everyone and welcome to the latest episode of Pulp, Punditry and Portchy. Hi everyone and welcome to the latest episode of Pulp, Punditry and Portchy. After a few weeks having some episodes down at the club, I'm quite excited to say that we've got a bit of an international flavour to today's episode, and we are going to be hearing from Nick. So Nick is a Kyoto Sanga fan out in Japan, obviously our fan link team. How you doing, Nick?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you very much for having me on, and yeah, looking forward to it.
Oh no, fantastic! No, we really appreciate you coming and taking the time to talk to us. So essentially, as you guys know who've been following the fans group as we've made a start, we've got some connections with some fans in Kyoto. Fortunately, from when I went on a visit there to Japan last year, and you've probably hopefully seen some of the games that we've put on our Twitter feed, basically on the live stream they did on the J League channel, or also the highlights as well. And in terms of the fan base at Kyoto, it's something that I've been really passionate about following over the last year since seeing them. Obviously with COVID it's been a bit of a challenge, them being able to get back into that, but no doubt they will soon. But we're just going to talk to Nick a little bit about obviously Nick being from the UK and is really invested in Sanga, and he lives over there as well, so just hearing a bit about that's going to be really fascinating. So in terms of, first of all, Nick, what brought you to Japan in the first place really, and how long have you been there for?
So I've been here now for 3.5 years, living here. Before I moved, I initially came traveling. After I finished university, I went and worked in Egypt for a year to save some money, and then I wanted to go traveling, and Japan was always my number one on my list. I've always been interested in Japanese culture, in history. So I always wanted to come to Japan, and when I came traveling here, I knew within 2 weeks of traveling here that I wanted to live here. I spent a lot of time in the Kansai area, so the Kyoto, Osaka, Kobe area, whilst traveling. And while I was here, while I was traveling, I applied for a job here and was accepted. So I moved to Kyoto a few months later and have been here since.
I'm absolutely so jealous of that. Like, it's an infectious place, Japan, isn't it? Like, as I can see anyway, you've stayed there. But I mean, in our short stay, probably 2 weeks traveling through all of the Honshu Island, like, it's definitely an infectious place. Like, what is it about Japan that essentially, I guess, prior to you going, attracted you, but what was it that kind of like, right, I'm really invested in this, I want to live here?
So whilst traveling, I think it was I was very enamored with the mix of culture, like traditional culture and modern technology. So there's a very interesting mix in Japan of having some of the most modern cities, some of the most modern technology, but also ancient history. And there's nowhere in Japan that represents that more than Kyoto. Kyoto is for anyone listening who hasn't been, Kyoto is a beautiful city surrounded by mountains, with many traditional shrines, temples, old places to visit, but at the same time also has some of the most modern technology. So for example, it's the headquarters of Nintendo, for example, are in Kyoto, and some of the leading Japanese pharmaceutical companies also reside in Kyoto. So it's Japan's got a fascinating mix of natural beauty, tradition, culture, ancient history, but also modern technology and a modern lifestyle as well. So I think whilst traveling, I think I was taken aback by that mix, and it's something that interested me. And You know, as I started living here, the idea was to live here for a long period of time. But as I have been here, it's become not just a long period of time. It's that I want to stay here, you know, for the rest of my life. So yeah, for anyone listening who hasn't been, I 100% recommend once all the COVID stuff has died down, yeah, absolutely come over and check it out.
Yeah, it's an absolutely fantastic, fascinating place, rather. So, in terms of the culture itself, like obviously you found it in some cases very easy to adapt to it because of it is such a fascinating place, and as you said, you've got so many perks like the historical aspect of Kyoto alongside the modern nature of it as well. But in terms of the culture, how easy have you found it to adapt? Are there some difficult aspects to it?
Generally in Japan, foreigners sometimes find it hard to adapt. I think Kyoto is maybe an exception because Kyoto's a very welcoming of foreigners and tourists because Kyoto's such a tourist hotspot.
Sure.
So in terms of living in Kyoto, it's been very easy to adapt. My Japanese is still fairly basic after being here for 3.5 years. I haven't had to really study, but you know, it's not been difficult to live here. I haven't felt out of my depth. I haven't felt like I'm not welcome. I've really felt like it's become a home for me. So in terms of adapting to the culture, I think I don't think it's too difficult to do that.
Absolutely, and just touching on what you said there with how welcoming the people are, that's certainly something we experience probably most in Kyoto out of all the cities. So it's nice to see that that's kind of still a link there with that as well. So moving on, I guess, to the football aspect as well. So how did you end up first getting into Sanga? Was that something quite early doors that you found and discovered, or was it something that as you kind of lived there and you heard a little bit more about it?
It was as soon as I moved here. So as soon as I moved here and knew which city I was going to be living in, straight away I wanted to get involved with the local football team. So for, you know, obviously I'll be new to your listeners. I'm originally from Jersey in the Channel Islands, but I'm a Manchester United fan back in the UK. So for me, growing up, it was a rare occasion in which I was able to go and watch Manchester United play live. So for me, I've always wanted a local team to support. I've always wanted, you know, a team representing the city in which I live to follow. And for me, it was a case of, as soon as I knew I was moving to Kyoto, I instantly looked into the football team and tried getting in touch with some people that maybe spoke a bit of English online. And within 3 weeks of living here, I was in touch with some people in the ultras scene, and they wanted to meet me and welcome me into the group. So yeah, it was almost instantly from moving here.
Oh, that's fantastic to hear. And how you've just said and touched on the kind of ultra scene and you being involved with that. So how involved are you in the support on match days, and is that something that's evolved over the time you've been there?
Yeah. So originally when I came, I was something of a celebrity amongst the ultras and the fans behind the goal. So that's kind of changed. I mean, you get less people asking for a photo with me now, and more, you know, asking how I've been and that kind of thing. So in terms of interaction with the other fans, and the other ultras, you know, I've become very friendly with them, rather than you know, feeling like someone, should I be here? Should I be part of this? Do I deserve to be part of this? You know, people that have spent their whole lives living in Kyoto, following this football club, and I'm coming in because I've just started living here. So that was an initial feeling that I had, but being welcomed in the way that I was, that's really, you know, helped and really helped me to integrate into the ultras scene. In terms of my match day responsibilities, so at home games, so at home games, most of the time the ultras are in the stadium early. They've set up the banners, they've set up, you know, the flags. That's all done usually before I get there. But on an away day, it might be different. On an away day, I'm in, you know, from the off in the away stadiums, and I'm helping set up the banners. I'm helping set up, you know, adding the color to our end of the stadium. And yeah, it's certainly away days. I feel much more involved in helping with the ultras group. The home games, I usually feel like, you know, I come and I'm with friends, but I don't feel like it's expected of me that I help set everything up. So yeah, that aspect of things hasn't really changed over the past few years, but certainly on away days, yeah, I really enjoy being part of adding the purple color to the opposing stadium.
Sure, and just I guess you saying about that with the support and getting there on match days. One thing that really like impressed me really, or just I wasn't expecting, was when we went to the old athletic stadium where Kyoto played last season. For those who aren't aware, for many years, basically we tried to get into the stadium fairly early because of our ticket was just purely in Japanese characters, and it was really difficult to understand where we were going to be sat. So we thought, let's get there early and sort that out. But we got into the stadium maybe half an hour before kickoff, and
everyone's already there.
Bouncing, singing. Like Juninho was training or warming up, and everyone was just like going nuts about it, you know, and singing his chants and everything. All the flags were going, and I was like, this is amazing. Like, we're half an hour from kickoff. Normally, if you know, even Old Trafford and things like that, if you go on a match day, it's still filling up and it's fairly tame, isn't it? You know, there's the radio, local radio playing or something like that. But you know, that was an eye opener really for me, and I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, so we usually get there at least 2 hours before kickoff, and the first thing is to welcome the team bus. So when the team bus comes in, we're outside the players' entrance. Particularly when we were at the previous stadium, as you say, we'll get onto the new stadium in a bit. But at the previous stadium, it was very much a case of the fans surrounded the team bus as it was coming in, and really, you know, tried to help the players along as they were arriving at the stadium. So we're usually there about 2 hours before kickoff, and that's when you can actually start going into the stadium. Is about 2 hours before, and you usually spend probably about 45 minutes to an hour. You know, you might go out, have a few drinks around the stadium after you've reserved your spot. And then about an hour before kickoff, everyone heads in and gets ready to welcome the players before their warm up. And as you say, you know, like you experienced when you went in about half an hour before kickoff, everyone's already there. Everyone's already bouncing. We're singing the players' names while they're warming up. And yeah, it's all about making sure that before the game starts, the players know that we're there and we'll be heard.
Oh, it's absolutely amazing. And yeah, we were talking about the old stadium. It said the like an athletic style stadium. Like, I thought it was great in terms of like it seemed like almost like quite a Soviet old school stadium with that. But I think in terms of the comparison to the new stadium, it was totally different. But how did you find them like playing at that old stadium? Because obviously it was like an athletics track. Did it really matter, like the fact you're further away, or did it just kind of add to the experience of being quite old?
Yeah, so it definitely had some charm to it. I enjoyed it, and you know, the penultimate game of last season, which was the last ever game there,
Yeah.
That was quite emotional for me. That, you know, when we won the game, we scored pretty late on, and that was quite an emotional moment for me, because I'd spent 3 years going to that stadium and had lots of good and bad memories there. So you know, it was in terms of the stadium itself, the athletics track, of course, it affects the atmosphere. You know, the atmosphere, particularly if you're watching on TV, for example,
Sure.
you know, the noise is just going up into the air. You know, it's not traveling as well to the pitch. So in terms of that kind of atmosphere, it did affect it, but being in the ultras section, it's still loud, it's still noisy. It doesn't affect, you know, it doesn't affect you when you're right next to the drums. So it's like I enjoyed it. It was a good old stadium with a lot of charm. But yeah, definitely glad for the move.
I guess in terms of first of all, like the club, for those who aren't aware, is in the J2, which is the second tier of the Japanese like league system, essentially. So, how difficult a league is that, do you feel, to get out of in J1? Like, so how has the club kind of fared in it over the seasons you've been involved?
So the season before I arrived here, Sanga did pretty well, and we're actually 1 goal away from getting promoted via the playoffs. Yeah, so the playoff system in J2 changes almost every year. But that particular season before I arrived, Sanga went out on a goal rule, which was that the team that finished higher during the season out of the playoff teams, if they drew the tie, then they went up. So there was no away goals, there was nothing like that. It was the team that finished higher in the league. If it was a draw, they went up via the playoffs. So Sanga ended up drawing that tie, and in the end, another Kansai team, Sudeiso Osaka, who are now a staple of J1, they went up instead. So that season before I arrived, there was a lot of change in that summer. Not in the summer, sorry, in the winter. There was a lot of change in the winter, and by the time the first season I attended started, Sanga were not in a great place. The season was a fairly poor one. There were some good moments in there, but we were certainly towards the bottom end of the table. And the following season was even worse. For half of the season, it looked like we were going to be going to J3. It was almost nailed on, but we brought in some very important players halfway through the season and ended up surviving fairly comfortably. So the first 2 seasons were pretty rough going, but I still loved it. I still enjoyed it. You know, it was great to watch. Last season was far better. So last season, we had some excellent young players, lots of pace, lots of attacking flair, and we weren't too far off the playoffs last year. But also coincided with my worst day as a Sanga fan, which was the last day of last season, in which we lost 13-1 to the team that ended up finishing top of J2. I think for me, I've never felt as physically sick after a game as I did after that game, and embarrassed, really. But it's a tough league. It's a tough league to get out of. I tend to find if you can go on a run in the second half of the season, you can really climb the table and you've got a good chance of getting out of the league. If you start the season well and drop off, you're not gonna get promoted. It's very, very difficult get promoted if you have a poorer second half of the season. So it's a tough league, and there are some big clubs in there this season that were relegated from J1. So it's going to be a tough ask, but I think this is the best I've seen Sanga since I've started supporting them, and the most confident I've been in Sanga's ability to really challenge to get into J1.
Sure, and definitely looking at the first few games, it seems to be that way. In terms of, we were saying about how difficult it is to get out of it. If they were to go up, like how, and we'll come on to the stadium after this as well, like how well equipped do you think they are to compete in the J1 if they got out of this league in particular?
Very.
Is there a big gap, or do you feel like it's actually fairly similar?
In terms of the size of the club, the stadium, the interest, Sanga have got everything to be a staple of J1.
Seems that way.
Yeah, so there are teams like Sapporo who went up a few years ago, and they've been very comfortable in J1 since going up. And I think that's the model to follow. If Sanga were to go up into J1, I think Sanga would be in a very good place to be able to be there for a long time.
No, it's brilliant to hear. Like, I think that's what obviously all the fans want, especially with the new move into the new stadium, which we'll have a bit of a chat about. So, for those people who haven't seen it, I mean, as soon as I saw the picture of it, it looks absolutely sensational. I mean, the purple seats does it for me as well. It makes it pop out, doesn't it, looking at it? But how long has that been in the works for? Has that been something for a long time? I guess even before you started supporting it. But I imagine that's been quite exciting for the fans, that being opening now, but also quite frustrating with the COVID issue, obviously, as well.
Very, yeah. So when I moved here, there were rumors that Sanga were going to be building a new stadium, or that Kyoto were going to be building a new stadium, because it actually belongs to the city itself.
Right.
So those rumors were flying around when I moved here. In terms of actually breaking ground to completion, it was done in 2 years, maybe a little bit less. So they did a good job of really progressing quickly. And during the time that we were at the previous stadium, it was very exciting to have that be in the knowledge that we were going to be moving to a brand new, beautiful stadium, which made it even more terrifying that season when we were very close to getting relegated, because that would have been a disaster to be in J3 and be in that stadium. In terms of the situation with COVID, it is very frustrating. We had a friendly before COVID started. We had a friendly to coronate the new stadium. Sure. And that was an amazing event. We had 16,000 there for a friendly, with the capacity of the stadium's 20, so it was almost full for a friendly. So that only stoked my excitement even more. And I of course had my tickets ready to go for the first. I bought them in advance for the first 3 games of the season, and then everything got cancelled. So it is extremely frustrating. For the listeners that aren't aware, Japan have started allowing a portion of fans back into stadiums now. There were a couple of games that were behind closed doors, like how it is back in the UK right now. But the J League have started allowing it. So the ratio is, it's either 50% or 5,000, whichever's lower. So right. At the moment, Sanga had a home game recently, and there were about 4,000 fans there. So a good turnout, but of course it's not the same as it should be. So we're obviously very frustrated about the situation, but everyone across the world is frustrated about the situation. So yeah, I can't complain too much. We're just looking forward to being able to be back there in our full numbers and really you know, start at the new stadium.
Sure, and that first game is going to be something else, isn't it? When you're all back in full.
It's going to be special. Yeah, it's going to be very special.
So in terms of the players rather in the team, especially this season as well, because you've had a few new additions, just so that listeners and also like the Portchester fans are aware of the ones to look out for when we can watch a few games. Like, so some of the players that, you know, stood out for me over the last couple of seasons is obviously Utaka, who's I didn't realise until recently is brother of John Utaka, who played for Portsmouth as well, and he's just joined this season. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and we've also got Juninho, who was quite a prominent player when I was there last season. I've seen they've signed like a Dutch player as well. So obviously the international imports do stand out naturally to the UK audience, but really I want to know, and I assume other people would as well, like which of the Japanese talent really should we be looking out for in the team? Like there was a player called Achimi, wasn't there, last year, who I like, but then he's moved on to the J1, I believe. As well. But yeah, what are some of the Japanese talent that we should be looking out for?
Yeah. So in terms of Ichimi, he was on loan from Gamba, which is Gamba Osaka is another of the Kansai clubs that are in J1. He was a very, very talented striker, very exciting. So I was a little bit disappointed that we weren't able to keep him on loan for another season for this season. In terms of young Japanese talents, Sanga this season seemed to have gone for experience over youth. There are a lot of experienced players in Sanga's team this year, both foreign imports, but also Japanese players. In terms of, there is one young player that I think really stands out at the club. His name is Shinpei Fukuoka, and he's an excellent young midfielder, extremely talented. He does have an eye for goal, but his best trait is his composure. He's unbelievably composed in the middle of the park, and it does help that he has got some very experienced players alongside him, the likes of Shoji, who plays as the orchestrator in the midfield. He's one of the most talented players in J2. So it's very helpful for the development of Fukuoka that he has a player like that next to him, because he could become that 100%. So there are some exciting young talents at Sanga, but this season Sanga have mostly gone for experience and really I think Sanga really are making a push this year for just trying to get to J1, just somehow trying to get up into J1 and then take it from there. I don't think many of these players will be at the club for the next 3 years, the next 5 years. I think a lot of them have been brought in to do the job of getting Sanga to J1, and I'm pretty sure they're being paid a good wage in terms of J2 standards to try and achieve that. So Sanga are in a good place, and particularly defensively, there's the back three. You mentioned the Dutch player, Jordi Boyce. He's very experienced, very talented, a bit of a hard man, but also very technically gifted. He set up a great cross for the first goal at the weekend. And so he's a very important player. But either side of him, we have two Japanese experienced centre-backs, Moriwaki and Ando. And I've compared on Twitter those three to the three of Juventus's Bonucci, Chiellini, and Barzagli during their very impressive reign. And I think Kyoto have something of a wall at the back. Sanga have something of a wall at the back this year. But there are still exciting young players coming through the academy.
And that's exciting to hear, and definitely look out for some of those this season. So in terms of the fan link and what we've kind of got here with my mate Toronto over in Kyoto as well, like we've obviously set that up last August or got talking when we came to a game. And him and his friends are, obviously support the Sanga and have kind of taken a bit of an interest in Portchester, our team as well. And it's been great to kind of set up that link. But for our fan base, I guess, how would you describe the Kyoto fan base for those who haven't seen them? Because essentially that's what I was really attracted to. And as part of the many clubs I've been lucky enough when traveling around the world to see in terms of the fan culture and the fan scene, I think Kyoto are right up there with some of the ones I've seen in terms of what they offer. So how would you describe the fan base to the Portchester fans?
So Sanga's fan base is a little bit unusual. Kyoto is not particularly an urban city. The likes of Tokyo, Osaka, Saitama in Japan are very urban cities, and the support kind of reflects that in terms of the youth going to the ground. For Sanga, there's a mix of passion, because Sanga fans are some of the most passionate fans I've ever seen. They'll drive miles and miles and miles for away games. I think one of the longest away days is about a 12-hour drive each way. And wow. We do get a half decent turnout for those ones. But the fan base is very passionate, but at the same time is surprisingly welcoming and warm, particularly towards foreigners. So I think there's certainly an international feel, even though there aren't that many international fans at Sanga games. You get the odd international fan that comes for the day, and then will obviously have a good impression of the club like yourself. Sure. But in terms of regular international fans, I'm pretty much the only one that is going on a regular basis pretty much every game I can get to. So Sanga fans are extremely passionate, extremely loyal, don't turn on the club too quickly, even in seasons when they're really not performing to the standard expected, and certainly are very welcoming of others.
That's really great to hear. And essentially going forward then for the rest of the season, I'm sure the fan base are excited about that. But what do you predict for the rest of the season? I mean, you said you were fairly confident that they could mount a challenge this season.
Yeah, I'm more confident in this team than I've been in any Sanga team since I've been here. I think we might end up having the best defense in the league. I just think that wall of the back three is going to be very tough for a lot of teams to break down. Utaka's goals are going to be huge this season. He's lethal.
Seems it, definitely.
The one concern I'd have is getting goals outside of Utaka. We have another striker, Japanese striker called Noda, who is something of a beast. He's pretty tall, pretty good in the air. He's got 2 goals in the first 4 games through both headers. So he might be a good outlet from getting crosses in from wide positions. I would like to see a few more goals from the wide areas and from midfield, but hopefully that will come. At the moment, I'm confident that Sanga will be within the top 5 come the end of the season. And if Sanga can somehow get into the top 2 and get automatic promotion, that would be the dream. But it is going to be difficult. There are some good teams this year, but I am more confident than I have been ever in Sanga getting to J1.
Yeah, let's hope so. So I just want to say, first of all, thanks so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you and hear a little bit more about Sanga, and especially from a UK-based fan initially as well. So it's quite interesting to hear that. Just before we do round up, I've just got a few quick-fire questions to finish about the Sanga for you. So we'll just start with favourite away day with Sanga. What's been your favourite away day?
Favorite away day was actually the season where we almost got relegated. The last day of the season, we were totally safe and we were going to an already relegated team. So it was completely pressure free. And I think it's the only away game I've been to that we actually won. So yeah, I'd say that one. That was a good day. Really enjoyed that one.
Awesome. And what is I guess touch on that. What is a Sanga away day like in terms of the day? You've already said about obviously getting to the stadium. Is it quite different to going to a home game? Are there certain people always a core amount of people go?
Yeah, very different. So the day starts very early depending on the kickoff time. But for example, you might meet in Kyoto at 7 a.m. in the morning, something like that, 6 a.m. sometimes. And you usually drive down to the other prefecture, the opposing prefecture. So, for example, you might have a 4-hour one-way drive or 3-hour one-way drive, depending on if you're going to a closer away game. If you're going to a further one, yeah, as I say, you can get up to 12-hour drives, 10-hour drives, getting to an away game. So the road trip itself is actually one of the most fun aspects of the day. It's great going to a new place, going to a new area of Japan and seeing a new city or town, depending on the team. And I've always enjoyed seeing new stadiums. So Sanga's stadium now is probably the best in J2. And in fact, I'd say certainly the best in J2 and one of the best in Japan generally. But I still love going to other stadiums and it's always fascinating to arrive at the stadium of another team, and that's part of the allure of an away day. But I think the best thing about an away day for me is the support at the away day, because those are the hardcore fans. Those are the ones that really put the time, money and effort in to follow the team. And there's no better feeling than drowning out the home fans. So I'd say that's probably my favorite thing about the away days. Least favorite thing is if we've lost the drive home. It's certainly not a good place to be taking a 5-hour, 6-hour drive back home after you've lost a game. But it's that's the gamble you take. The gamble you take is away wins are the best wins, and away losses are the worst losses. So that's the gamble you take.
It's why we all love football, isn't it? It's the roulette, the euphoria or the somber drive back, like you've said. It's all part of it.
Exactly.
So, in terms of favourite Sanga player, like past or present?
Present, I would say probably the new boy in centre back Moriwaki, simply because I think he's nuts. I think he's absolutely crazy. So I'm really enjoying his antics. I think he's become a leader in the team. So yeah, really enjoying that. Past, I would say probably Kevin Orris, the Belgian that was at the club the first season I was there. And that's because at the first game I went to, I had a little bit too much to drink. And at the end of the game, when the players came over to the fans, I shouted at him to come over and speak to me. And he did. So he came over and I shook his hand and I just told him to keep going, keep fighting. And he was a good guy. And he was friends with some of my friends over here. So I'd say past, probably Kevin Orris. Present, Moriwaki, the new centre-back.
Awesome. And best player you've seen play against Sanga in the time supporting them?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, that is a tough one. I would probably say for me, the best player is probably Olunga from Kashiwa when we lost 13-1 at the end of last season. And I think, if I remember correctly, he got 6 of them or 7 of them. I can't even remember. But he was pretty scary to watch.
I can imagine. Yeah, we won't touch too much on that. I'm sure it'll bring back bad memories.
No, it does. Yeah, it does.
And just to finish off, furthest you've travelled then on these away days to watch football, generally in Japan or with the Sanga? What's the furthest you've gone?
I'd say the furthest away day is probably a 5-hour trip to Tokushima.
They played those recently. Was that the team they played a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did. Obviously, there were no fans at that game, so sure. Couldn't go to that one. But that's a good trip. It's a very nice drive there. Yeah, it's between 4 and 5 hours, depending on if you stop to look at the whirlpools on the way. So yeah, it's I'd say that one. In terms of traveling in Japan and seeing a game, while I was traveling here before I moved, I actually was speaking to a Shimizu S-Pulse fan, and I went and watched the game the day after climbing Mount Fuji. I went and watched a game with them. So I had almost no sleep because I spent the night there on top of Mount Fuji. And then no, it's
talking to me, yeah.
I was foolish enough not to reserve a mountain hut, so I was very, very cold and had no sleep. So yeah, that was an experience. I loved it, but that was exhausting.
I don't think you'd have need more sleep anyway, mate. In the huts, I have to say, a lot of farting and a lot of snoring going on. Yeah, I think I slept 5 minutes and was like, stuff this, let's carry on walking up the mountain.
Yeah, good experience though. Good experience. But yeah, a very long trip, that one.
Yeah. But no, it sounds fantastic. Thanks so much again just for coming on and talking to us. So in terms of following Sanga this season, what are some of the games that we should look out for in the coming weeks? When are they playing next, just so our fans are aware?
The next game is this weekend. At the moment, they are sticking to a once a week schedule. The next game is an away game, and it's gone out of my head who we're playing. But yeah, so we've got a great record at home at the moment. Won both of our home games, not the best away at the moment, lost the first away game, drew the second, so hoping for an away win this weekend. So that's the next one. But I would certainly suggest anyone that can watch the home games online if you want to see the new stadium, even with limited fans, it still looks fantastic. So if you want to see the new stadium, I definitely recommend trying to catch some home games.
Oh, we certainly will, definitely. And we'll be definitely supporting from a distance during this season. I've already ordered a flag with the Kyoto and Portchester connection on it, along with some stickers I've been tagging around. So we'll be following from afar with interest for sure. But thanks so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat with you and get to know you more.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. So that's it, guys. So another episode done and dusted. If you want to catch up with more previous episodes, then just make sure you like and subscribe on the YouTube channel Pulp, Punditry and Portchy. For further news and just going on within the club and also the fan base, just make sure to check us out on @Arancione Fans on all social media. Until next time, guys.